Welcome to Beyond the Bottom Line, the podcast where founders and business owners get in-depth insights and actionable takeaways from industry experts. We're here to help maximize your revenue, streamline your operations, and keep more of your hard-earned money. Now here's your host, Miguel Alexander Centeno.
Thanks for joining. I'm Miguel, founder and CEO of Centurion Firm, where I have the honor of leading a small tax strategy team serving businesses just like yours. And the cool thing about what I get to do is I get to work with businesses who are doing much cooler things. I'm excited to have a very special guest, someone who's been instrumental in building our own brand, to talk a little bit about what she's doing. I think it's going to be a very insightful and exciting conversation. Jenn, Cordova, pleasure to have you on today.
Thanks, Miguel. Happy to be here.
Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're working on today.
Yeah, of course. Basically, I build retail-ready, strategy-led food and beverage brands that don't just look good, but they actually sell and move off of shelves. I'm the founder and creative director of Jenn Cordova Design, which is mostly me, but I also have contractors that I work with or partners when I need something special, like a developer to work on something or an illustrator. I'll call them in, but I'm the main brains and creative behind my brand. I basically work with founders who are either launching a new product or venture, as well as founders who may have already launched and they've kind of gotten to a stopping point and they're stuck with, how far their current branding or packaging will take them, and their product won't get picked up by stores or distributors, and they kind of need to rethink everything, the strategy, but also the look, so that they can, move on to the next level and get to accomplish the goals that they want to accomplish.
And I want to dive more into, CPG and packaging and how you think about design. First, I'd like to hear a little more about your story. Where did you grow up? And tell me about your launch into entrepreneurialism.
Yeah, of course. So I grew up in central Pennsylvania, nice small college town, nothing exciting, but a nice place to grow up. But then I eventually...
All Steelers fans, or where are you fitting in?
Honestly, it's right in the middle. So it's where Penn State main campus is. And I went to Penn State for, I think, 3 semesters for a little while. And it was split half and half. It was half Steelers, half, Philadelphia. And we'd honestly walk down the street and someone would yell for one team and there would be just as many people on the other side of the street yelling for the other team. So it was a nice little mix. But that's where I'm from. And then I ended up going to school in Colorado. Just kind of was a little more adventurous and wanted to see more of the world. So went out to Colorado and got my degree at the Art Institute of Colorado in downtown Denver.
Oh, it's very beautiful. And I want to rewind a little bit without dating yourself, but what was exciting in design when you were in college? I'm curious.
Oh my goodness. Honestly, I grew up thinking that it would be the coolest thing if I could design music albums, because those used to be a thing and that used to be such a big part of our childhood of actually opening a new CD and seeing the album art. And I grew up doing fine art, but it always just captured me. You kind of entered the world of this artist and saw the visuals, but the lyrics, and it just really took you into a world. And I just thought to myself, wouldn't it be so cool if I could do this for a living? Which I didn't, but, it kind of was inspiration behind it all.
I'm going to make sure we come back to origin story, but just really quick on album art. I was thinking about this the other day because, CarPlay will show the album cover and it's just interesting. I'll date myself. I realized my favorite album art are Linkin Park, and my other one is Fred Durst band. I forget what it was, but the reason it stood out is because I have my young kid in the back and he's like, what is that? Is that a movie? He doesn't know. So is album art gone? Is it out the window, or does it still kind of matter with that little icon on Spotify?
Honestly, it's just kind of entered a new phase where it's not this tangible thing, but it's all digital now. So yeah, you see the actual album cover that you can recognize when you're in Spotify or Apple Music or something to select. But I mean, I'm going to talk about the great Taylor Swift, like who's an expert at branding. And honestly, every album is branded in a whole different light. So I think people are using that like in their social media or updating their websites whenever a new album is launched. So it's kind of not just like an album that you open and look at and read and follow the lyrics, but it's kind of just the whole digital world for that artist at the time when they released it.
Very
So it's really interesting. Yeah.
It's very interesting. So album art is not dead, and that kind of warms my heart a little bit. So it's always interesting to hear like what we were excited about when we first started, like even pre actually thinking about a business. It comes down to like what you're interested in. Let's move into your entrepreneurship chapter, and I know there's a little bit of gap. I don't know if you're like me, but I went to go work somewhere before I realized, what, I can do this on my own. Tell me a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, honestly, and it even started a little before that. I remember being in elementary school, and this is really gonna, take me back, but I remember we did, those right and left brain tests that you used to do when you were a kid, and you kind of would like learn a little bit more that brain was, more of the artistic side and the creative side, and the left brain was a little more, I'm sure you're left-brained, Miguel.
You'd be surprised. I don't want to be.
I just remember taking this test in whatever grade it was, and I got 50-50. And I was shocked because I just grew up thinking I'm an artist. I grew up doing fine art, and everything I did and what inspired me was all creative stuff. And so when I learned that I'm actually just as much like technical and literal as I am creative, I just kind of felt like I didn't know myself. But I feel like that kind of defined where I was going, because I originally did try, when I graduated from high school, I originally went to school for art education, and it wasn't a good fit.
High school?
No, this was in college. I went for art education.
Okay.
And yeah, and it wasn't a good fit. I thought it would be because I wanted to do fine art as my job, but I didn't want to be a starving artist. So art education seemed logical, but it just wasn't challenging me in the way that I wanted to. I didn't feel like I was being pressed to be a good artist because I was only a teacher, and I wasn't being pressed to be a good teacher because I was only going to be an art teacher. So I didn't last too long in that program and was actually very inspired. There was a speaker that was the head of the graphic design department where I was at the time at Penn State, and gave a really eye-opening presentation about the challenges of the graphic design department. They're pretty well known there at Penn State. And it seemed like a challenge, and it seemed exciting, and I hadn't been excited in a long time. So that's when I actually decided to make that switch into graphic design. So, I did the logical thing. I studied graphic design. I got my degree. I actually wanted to go out to the West Coast. So I got my first job out on the West Coast. And I worked out there for a couple years, but it wasn't as exciting and challenging as I had hoped, because when you're working in-house for a company, you have one brand that you're working with every single day. And for the most part, those have already been defined by other designers. And so I felt like a pixel pusher, and I was not motivated to go to work. I just really struggled in that environment because I wasn't challenged enough, and it was kind of the same old every day.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's when it just kind of clicked. This wasn't working. My mental health was really struggling because I'm somebody that needs to create and needs to be inspired to want to get out of bed in the morning. And I wasn't feeling that. And so, I ended up leaving where I was at in California and decided, to try the whole freelance thing, which, started all of this. So
That's so cool. Was any of it just because, when we talk to clients or we talk to other business owners, there's also this financial aspect. And I want to just pause and say, I really appreciate that what you're talking about is something that's harder for left brain people to really think about. Is like, am I doing something where I'm like really expressing myself and using the tools that I want to do? And I think it's awesome that was the lead for you. I want to ask about the other side of it. How were you thinking about, am I going to have enough? How am I going to make money? Like how did you think about that at that time? I'm curious how you figured it out.
I grew up in a very traditional household. My dad was an engineer, very reliable income. He'd leave at, 8 o'clock in the morning and get back, 5:30 or 6 in the evening. And that's what I knew. And I gave it a good go to do the standard thing and to get like a salaried position with benefits and everything.
Because that was the right thing to do, right?
That was, what my parents wanted. I wanted stability. I wanted to be, a reliable adult. And I thought that's what you had to do. So that's what I did, but it just didn't work. And I just struggled with my mental health. I struggled with getting out of bed in the morning. I was in Orange County, California, and it was, on a good day, a 45-minute drive to work, on a bad day, an hour. But even like with the drive aside, I wasn't feeling inspired. I wasn't feeling creative. I didn't want to go to work because I wasn't being challenged. I needed to create more than I was creating, and I needed something more that would change from day to day. I needed more of a challenge. And that's why it kind of just lent itself well to freelance, where not only am I working with different brands throughout, any one day, but I'm building a business and I'm, working for myself, making my own schedule, finding my own clients, doing my own marketing, and just being like a little jack of all trades. And that was scary and that was hard, but that, inspired me and motivated me to do it and to do it well.
I love that you're saying that like the inspiration is what drove you. Because I think that's really important. But things got bad first and then inspiration took over.
That was true. But that's when you realize you nitpick the little things that make you you. And I knew I needed something that could let me be more creative and would be more challenging on the day to day than, pushing around brand assets that somebody else created and rearranging it on a desktop or something daily. I needed to actually get in and do the original branding was what really drove me and why I find myself in the branding position today.
And it looks like it's worth it. How did you know that it would work out, or did you? How did you get yourself confident enough to do it?
Honestly, I had no idea if it would work or not. All I knew is for my own mental well-being, it was kind of what I had to do. I had to create at my own speed. I had to create things that inspired me. I wanted to pick and choose what I would create and just have more at my fingertips that I could pick at it from day to day, making my own schedules and, nobody looking over my shoulder. Of course, I'm going to produce the best work that I can no matter what for the sake of my own brand and reputation. But just not having those eyes over my shoulder, watching the clock, clocking in, clocking out, that was really helpful. So I did not know if it would work or not. I just knew that I had to give it a go, basically.
And that sometimes is the perspective it takes to make it actually work. And so cool. Where did you find your first clients?
First clients. So I had moved here to Nashville, where I currently am. But I was doing originally just some short contract positions around locally that I was finding through, some people that are trying to find people to fit the jobs. But I got contacted by someone I had graduated with. And she was like, hey, a friend of mine, she's launching a business with her husband to get people to enter all these businesses in Steamboat, Colorado, and get more people visiting town. It's a winter town for, skiing. People to know that there are more things to do than just skiing at the mountain, to know where they can go, where they can eat, where they can shop while they're there. It wasn't anything flashy or exciting, but it was, something steady.
Yeah. And after that experience, did it inform like what kind of clients you wanted to work with, and how would you define that today?
It introduced me to a lot of small business owners. And basically, these business owners didn't have a logo, had never done an advertisement, and they were given my contact information and I'd have to come up with an ad for them. And it was fun, but it was also, insightful, kind of learning. Not everybody comes from a visual background like I do, and they come from more of, what if it's a restaurant, more of a food background and a business background. So just kind of seeing into these small businesses, and it really was so fun to see these business owners like light up when they saw, their store presented well and actually like a real advertisement for their company or their store. So that really got me started working with small business owners. And, I work with small to medium business owners now, but it's the same thing. I love working with a client early on and then watching them evolve and their business grow because they had, the right visual assets and the stuff for marketing that they needed to promote themselves, and just watching their business grow and
Yeah.
just, the little thought in the back of my mind that I helped them do that is so rewarding.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it definitely helped with that. And it gave me my first experience with, small business owners. And one of them is even still my client to this day that I
Wow.
worked with in Steamboat, Colorado. Is still, he'll reach out every year or two and, need some new things designed. So it's fun, and it's fun to see how they evolve.
It's really cool. I think that's a moment where you realize you were doing things right. And I think for you, it's very, it's obvious that like life doesn't move linearly. I think for a lot of people, they do think that, you get one client and two clients and it's just going like that. But I love your story in that like it seems like it's been a discovery of like what really makes you feel, I don't know, alive or engaged. Like how it's you.
Drives me. What inspires me to get out of bed in the morning, basically. And it's not just one thing, but creating always inspires me and gives purpose to my days. But also the challenge of running a business has been so rewarding as well. Like, I don't know what I'm doing when I started out, there were so many ebbs and flows, and, I'd have, clients for a couple months and then it would settle down and then I would need to pick up a contract position. And, it was a lot of figuring things out slowly for me. Um, but I came to realize that building that business was just so rewarding to me when I got to see each year, my income growing and my client list growing and people referring me, like my clients referring me to other clients. And it was just all so rewarding and kind of worked together and, really let me know that I was on the right track, I guess. Yeah.
How would you describe like where you are in the business now? Because I want to kind of paint the picture of like where you started and where you're at now. And I think there's other people who are thinking about starting their own thing that they want to hear like, does it ever get easy or like, does the fear kind of go away?
I don't think the fear goes away. But I think fear shares the stage with excitement. And when excitement and anticipation, kind of takes the seat more than the fear, it just kind of gives you a real drive. You also gain, confidence as you go. Like I said, I knew nothing about business when I got started. All I knew was how to create great designs. So I took what I knew and I started piecing it together. And, today it's not even just about creating nice designs for people, making a pretty logo. It's a lot more than that. I work more with, brand clarity and positioning and what it takes to, allow a retail product to move off the shelves. It's a lot more strategy and just kind of where I meld strategy and visual identity together. That's kind of my sweet spot, that you can't have one without the other. You can, but it's taking a big risk. It might not work out in your benefit.
I like what you shared about, excitement and fear share the same stage. And in truth, share the same symptoms, right? Like your heart rate speeds up can mean you're excited or afraid. And I think reframing that is a really helpful way to think about it. I think what fair to kind of observe is that, you started with a few clients of people you knew, you grew that, and you shared a little bit. You've got recurring business. The recurring business has referrals. How long would you say it takes to kind of get to that place where you've kind of taken off and you're fully in the air?
Honestly, for a creative business, it can be completely different for everybody. And for me, it took a while. So I would probably say, so I officially launched my freelance business in my design studio in 2018. But I had been at it for a few years ahead of that time. And even when I launched, I didn't have a marketing plan. I didn't know anything about sales. So for me, it probably took at least a good 5 or 6 years to, kind of understand where I was and where I was going. But, I know there are people out there who, know marketing ahead of time and go into it, putting their feet into the marketing aspect first. And, they can have a fully functioning business, within a year. That wasn't me. I took the, long way around, but, eventually I got there and figured it out for sure.
I think the downside of sometimes figuring out sales and marketing first is you end up not being able to figure out operations. So, it's like this chicken and egg, which one comes first? You need both, obviously. But I think that's exactly right. Like, I think in our business, just to share a bit, we figured out like SEO marketing. I think that's when we met. I was like, all right, I think we need to upgrade our design. We had more leads than we could handle. And me being just like young and dumb, call it, or ambitious, I was like, all right, well, let's just figure out the highest price that a lead will pay to get their taxes done. And we actually ended up with clients that couldn't all be served. They weren't all happy. They didn't have an amazing experience. So then like the year after that, I had to just sit with, okay, let's actually forget all the sales and marketing and figure out what an amazing experience is. And the question I'll reflect back to you is what is an amazing experience for a client that's looking to explore design or branding? Tell us a little bit about your client experience.
Yeah, I feel like I keep updating it to get better year
Sure.
by year. I'm always trying to, reinvent things. Plus, there's always new technology to make the process smoother. And then also, I've also changed kind of my route of my design. Also, when I launched in 2018, I was mostly doing package design and it was mostly wellness. And I was good at it. I wouldn't say I loved the wellness industry. It's what people seeked me out for. Yeah. So I'm in the food and beverage industry now, and that's just what really makes me passionate. And maybe I'm vain because I like seeing my products on the shelf, in the grocery stores, but I also just love the beverage market. I feel is always on the cutting edge of like new trends and trend setting, and it's always pushing the boundaries of what's acceptable for design. And I love having, more flexibility and more at my fingertips that I can explore. I do love beverages, and I love being able to kind of invent the direction it's going to go for the brand, what might work for them versus somebody else, and just being able to play with that. I just feel like the playing ground for food and beverage is so much wider than a lot of the other industries. And that's just kind of where I've thrived and where I just find my passion these days.
If I was launching a food and beverage brand tomorrow and just assume that I forget what side of the brain is just very analytical, but let's just say I don't have the creative. How do you take someone like that to kind of think about how they want to show up and positioning and strategy?
Yeah. First of all, I need to present myself as an authority who knows my niche, who knows what I'm doing. And that kind of attracts people who are, also in the food and beverage industry. But I like to share my knowledge, like give out free knowledge on, social media or email campaigns or whatnot, and just kind of explain some of the ins and outs. But I also like to, make people who are, interested in what I do feel comfortable enough that they can reach out to me and be like, hey, I've been thinking about launching my own yada yada business, but I don't really know how to start. Can you help me? And so then it's just kind of sitting them down. And if they don't have business experience, kind of explain the first thing you need to do. If you have a recipe or like what, genre you're going into with your food or beverage, is you need to start building that brand and identifying your positioning. What sets you apart from your competitors? Because that leads into what's going to separate you on the shelf. What can you present to your audience that's going to separate you from the competitors? Defining that audience, depending on, where that positioning lies, you might have a whole different audience than, some other people in the same industry. But yeah, it's just a little bit of that and just walking them through it. But then I also work with clients who, this is their 10th business that they're launching. And so then the process is a little bit different. And often they'll come to me with their own strategy already, and they'll have the investors in place, and they need less of the business coaching by me, but more of how do I take this, stack of papers of research, and how do I make it visual to present a brand that I can then market? And, how do I present my product so that stores and distributors are going to want to pick it up and put it on their shelves? So yeah, it depends on the client, but I'm here to teach and learn. And honestly, I love working with the client. So, if they want to take lead, in some of the aspects of the process, I'm fine with that too. Each partnership's a little bit different, I think.
And it's so true. And, I'm just feeling some gratitude that we got you to lend your skills into the tax and accounting space, because oftentimes a lot of the tax and accounting brands look the same. Their last names, it's like all like green and gray and red. So I think it's cool. And I think it's a bit of a hack too, that if you're in a boring traditional business, to get someone else that's in an industry that's designing for something more cutting edge, standing out. Like, you've got to stand out on a shelf in a grocery. Like, I don't think a lot of people realize how hard that is, So
there's a lot of noise out there these days. And then with the current economy, that's a whole nother ball game, where stores are really narrowing down on what they want on their shelves, because they only want a sure thing, like something that they know will sell. So you're finding a lot of people in my industry are narrowing their SKUs, like their products. They're not offering as many, because they want to just focus on, the few that they know are dependable and will move, and they know, will be picked up by these stores. There's just a lot of noise out there, and people are really trying to cut through that noise right now.
I'd love to just hear a little bit about how you think about cutting through the noise with design.
Yeah. First of all, like when you see two products that are similar on the shelf, like you can think about color. The most interesting story I had heard, and I wish I knew the name of the brand that did this, but it was just such an interesting marketing story about, it was a leafy green business that sold bags of like salad mixes in the grocery, like fresh aisles.
Mhm.
And everybody's doing like green bags, or black and green, or blue and green bags. They did red. And red has nothing to do with the greens, like the product inside. But guess what? It like really cuts through the noise and makes them stand out. So when you're in the store and you're, 10 feet away from, the salad area, you can see the red sticking out and be like, hey, what's that? Like that. Exactly. You'll focus on the red. And that's something you're going to remember too, which is super important in my industry, is if you're doing something different, the chance of you being remembered and a customer coming back for you, the chance is way higher. So you can do that with color. You can do that with shape. Those are like the major things. Like sometimes I remember this from the wellness space a lot of, you'll be in a pharmacy and you'll see some boxes are like really empty. Like they look like these big boxes. You pick them up and you hear something shaking at the bottom. It's because they want that vertical space on the shelf that nobody else is occupying. so that when somebody's looking at the shelf, they see, oh, this product's way taller. I notice it. And that's when they're going to, read the messaging on the front. So the shape means a lot, but also the messaging. Nobody wants a product that you're not quite sure what it is. It needs to be super clear because you have, they say 3 to 5 seconds, but honestly, I'd argue that it's shorter than that to catch somebody's attention. But to cut through the noise and to say who you are and why the customer needs you. You being the product, obviously. But yeah, messaging and clarity is really, really important.
That's really powerful. Yeah, my kids are really into energy drinks, my teens, and they've like gone through the brands. And so like I can just think through like what stands out. Cause like in a world where I'm just used to seeing like the Monster, which is like super bold type, like 2 colors. I think the packaging that looks really cool, or the can design on like the blue, that one, they're an offset here. It stands out. Like all of a sudden it's like these light Easter pastels and there's like curves on it. So yeah, I'm just thinking about it from my perspective. That totally makes sense.
Yeah. And, Bloom's positioning is they're trying to get those female customers. So that's why they're using the more feminine color palette. And those curves are more feminine too. And that attracts, the feminine customer. But yeah, it's interesting. And the story of Liquid Death is like one of my favorite because I'm a big Dan Jansen fan of Lincoln Design Co., who actually created those Liquid Death cans. When it came onto the market, nobody was doing water in cans. And so it really set itself apart. But Dan Jensen was really he's the owner of Lincoln Design Company. He was really into like action sports and thought it would be a good, opportunity for marketing if these athletes were holding, these cans and, they need to hydrate because they're athletes. So to be holding like a bright, energy drink can might not make the most sense at the time. So why not do a water? Because they're going to be hydrating anyway. And if it looks like an energy drink, it's going to catch attention and it's going to look really cool in their hand. So yeah, it's just doing something different that like breaks up the everyday is what, really cuts through.
Yeah, I love that story too, because they like did a big sponsorship at ACL, the music festival here. And I realized that I didn't want to drink beer. I wanted to drink water. But what I liked about the can is it kind of had that same like tactile feeling of like holding a beer, and like putting in a koozie. So I all of a sudden, on accident, good for me, ended up just, replenishing on water in a can because it kind of felt, like I'm at a music festival and I got the weight and the thing that I'm used to holding.
Yeah. And now they have all these other competitors out there that are, trying to copy, what they did or, take that idea and take it to, the next level, which is interesting. But just when it launched, it was just blew my mind. So smart.
I think that's a principle that like a lot of other businesses can kind of think through is like, there's a metaphorical shelf. How do you stand out, take the space that no one else is taking? I think it's really insightful kind of things that you're sharing here that apply to other businesses outside of food and beverage as well.
Agree.
Well,
Yeah.
I want to ask you, I have to ask you about AI design. I'm so far, like, I think it's kind of like a huge risk. You end up with things that kind of obviously look AI. How are you thinking about AI in design space today?
Yeah. Well, I have to say most of my clients that I work with have been, messing around in AI and they're scared to admit it to me. But I try to embrace AI and honestly, I use it so regularly. So my advantage and why I like the use of AI is that my clients who don't have a visual bone in their body can present me with their concept and it actually makes sense to me. So usually often before AI, if they were trying to communicate an idea, what I was seeing in my head did not match what they were seeing in their head. And now it's a great tool for my clients to communicate an idea to me. And So I try to embrace it. I think it's a
Yeah.
good thing. And as of now, it's not going to take my job. I can't promise for the future, but I mean, if you're creating stuff on AI, it's usually way too general these days. It's not specific and tailored enough. It's not taking into account your specific positioning or your brand story. So you really have to know those fundamental features ahead of time before you actually get in and create something. So that's, where I'm able to stand out with my work is doing the work ahead of time before the design and then creating, a one of a kind full representation that can grow with you instead of blend into the sea of everybody else in your industry's logo or packaging. So
That is, I think, very insightful. AI as a starting point is, I think, something that also applies in our industry where you need an expert to kind of take it all the way and tailor it, but it does help as a starting point. I'd love to hear a little bit about what shaped your thinking.
Yeah, some of my favorite books. I love reading books that other designers have put out there to kind of walk through their client process, but also the process of how they've grown. But as far as like business in general book, I really like Obviously Awesome by April Dunford. It has a great, clear breakdown of positioning. It's kind of one of the best breakdowns I've seen. And the biggest problems with packaging design that I see is the problem with positioning. And so it's just a great breakdown. I will keep coming back to that book, but I really appreciate it. It has a lot of good knowledge in there.
And what's a lesson that you've learned that you would share with your younger self or younger creatives who are looking to start their own business?
Don't expect everything at the front start of when you're launching your business. It's most important to get out there and start getting the word out about your business. I, for one, was just petrified at putting the wrong work out or the wrong image of my business out at first. But get out there. You have to do it anyway. And then start, finding your voice and how you want your brand to look. But get out there, and the sooner you do, the sooner you're gonna, have those followers and those potential clients coming in. But also, it's really important to learn the fundamentals of strategy. So many designers, I feel like they are either afraid of strategy or they think it can be one or the other, like they're a visual person or a strategy person. But here I am, like I told you, I was confused when I was 10, because I was 50% logical and 50% creative. What does that mean for me? I know I'm not the only one out there. And I think the more time you put into, research and strategy, the better your design is going to be. But as a broad entrepreneur in general, just give yourself some space to figure things out as you go and don't expect too much up front.
Well, let's go through our last round of rapid fire questions. Give me someone you follow that has been inspirational and helpful in your business.
Okay. I'm going to give a little shout out to Christy Campbell, who's over at Pink Pony Creative. She's in New Zealand and has a similar design style and similar brand studio where basically she helps brands launch, and she's got a more wide array of clients than I do. But it's really been fun watching her like launch her podcast and hire her first employee. She's been really inspirational, and there aren't a whole lot of women out there in the forefront of design, but she's one of them. And she's getting noticed and she's getting big brands, and it's just really exciting to see someone who's around my age doing the same thing and getting such great results.
What about a recent travel experience that's been influential?
Yes. So all of my branding within Jenn Cordova Design is based on Moab, Utah, with red rocks and orange rocks and stuff. And I just love the outdoors because I used to live in Colorado. But yeah, it's last September, I went to Utah again. It wasn't Moab this time. It was Goblin Valley State Park. And it was just so good to get away from screens and deadlines and reconnect with nature and kind of honestly rediscover more of who I was like back in my 20s that, I'm a mom now. I've got this business and it just seems so long ago, but to just put everything down for a few days. And we went hiking and camping out in the state park. And it was lovely, and rock climbing, and just reminded me that I'm actually this adventurous person that I had forgotten about. So that just helped like reboot me and, give me some more inspiration for, my creativity, which was great.
I love that. You got to step away to keep building. That's a great point. And then
Yeah.
what's a productivity tool that has wowed you and you use very frequently?
I'm really into Trello right now.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's because I'm a visual person, but I love how you can have your project management with all your projects in front of you on the screen, and you can literally drag and drop into like a different stage of the process. It's kind of like, checking a box on a list. For me, it does the same thing. Like I was in this stage and now the product isn't, or this project is now in this stage. It's really helpful. Keeps me organized. It's a good place to keep all my information about each client and, where we are in the process. So I've really been loving that.
That's fantastic. So there you have it. Jenn Cordova with Jenn Cordova Designs. It's been a pleasure to have you. Just for those listening that want to keep following you and learn more, where can they find you?
I'm at Jenn Cordova Design on Instagram, but also that's my website as well. But definitely go to my Instagram. That's where you see like all of the day-in happenings in my business and what I'm currently creating or, what's happening in my studio. But I was also wanting to say I was going to give, a little discount to your listeners, Miguel. So if any of your listeners on this podcast want to reach out to me either through Instagram or my website, Jenn Cordova Design, I will give you 10% off if you can give me Miguel's name and mention this episode. So that can be, for any project that you might need. But I wanted to, give that to your listeners.
Thank you. That's appreciated. We'll definitely include a link to your socials in the show notes. And again, just such a pleasure. Thanks for making the time.
And thanks, Miguel.
Thank you for joining this episode. To make this conversation more actionable, I encourage you to write down one or two things that you took away. And if you want to connect with me, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, where I'm fairly active. Look for Miguel Alexander Centeno. And if you found value in this show, please subscribe on whatever platform you use to listen to podcasts. And stick around for the next show. What you learn might change your business.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Bottom Line. This podcast is brought to you by Centurion Firm, bringing you Fortune 500 tools and strategies to help small businesses and other organizations with tax, accounting, and technology implementation that maximize cash flow and long-term value. Learn more at centurionfirm.com.